The reason why I am so passionate about dyslexia is because of being a dyslexic person myself. I feel like I really understand that we have a responsibility to change the narrative around what we are delivering to young people in the classroom.
When Princess Beatrice received her DNA test results, what she saw shocked her and left her in tears. But what she did next will shock you even more. It all started on Wednesday, May 21st. 2025. The entire royal house was troubled by the scandal spreading across the country. But those most affected were the family of the ex-Duke of York and his former wife. The news that morning was that their very first child, Princess Beatrice, was adopted. This was shocking to everyone, but it was most shocking to the one at the center of it all. Princess Beatrice, who was already 36 years old, a mother and a wife. She had her own life, her own family, and her little daughter, Sienna Elizabeth. Everything seemed perfect for her. Everything had been in place, but this report disturbed the peace she had built. It was not only because of the seriousness of the claim, but because of the impact it could have on her. If the story was true, it would mean her entire life had been a lie. So stay with us till the end of this video to get the full gist. The headline spread quickly. By sunrise, newspapers carried the same bold words. Radio and television repeated them every hour. Social media boiled with comments, guesses, and arguments. Outside royal buildings, crowds began to gather, waiting for a statement. But the palace was silent. That silence left a gap, and the gap was filled with even more questions. Questions like, who had started the story? Where did it come from? Was there proof? Why had no denial come from those who should have spoken first? And the surprising thing was that the hook for many readers came in the way the story was told. The report claimed to have inside knowledge, to be backed by sources close to the family. Though no names were given, the suggestion was enough to throw fuel on the fire. That morning, Beatrice was furious. She did not sit still. She rose to her feet quickly, her face set, and began to walk about the room. She picked up her phone, checked the screen, and set it down again without dialing. She opened a drawer, took out a paper, looked at the headline, and dropped it back in place. She moved to the window, pulled the curtains aside, and looked out. Reporters were waiting at the gate. Cameras turned as soon as her figure appeared behind the glass. She pulled the curtains shut again. She walked back and forth, her steps sharp and uneven. Staff came into the room quietly and left just as quietly. No one brought answers. No message came. No explanation was given. The house itself seemed to carry the weight of the scandal. Portraits hung on the wall, reminders of the family line, but none of them spoke. The phones kept ringing, but nothing was said. The questions grew larger, yet the answers did not appear. Beatrice's anger grew with the silence. She stood, walked the room again, and searched for an answer. But no answer came. Nothing seemed clear. No voice explained the truth. And as the morning passed, the storm around her only grew louder. But she was not going to let the storm get the better part of her. She reached for her phone, scrolled quickly, and pressed the name she had always trusted most, her mother. "Hello, Mummy," she said, her voice tight. "You've seen it?" "Yes, darling, I've seen it," came the reply, calm but heavy. "What does it mean? Why are they saying this? Tell me it's not true." There was a pause on the other end. Then Sarah, her mother, spoke slowly. "Beatrice, don't let them frighten you. You know how the press works. They invent stories. They want a scandal. That's all this is." Those words were meant to comfort her, but they were not reassuring. They did not sound strong enough against the storm raging outside. Beatrice ended the call, stood up, and walked to the back of the house. She slipped through the garden, past the reporters waiting at the front gates, and drove away. Her destination was her parents' house in Windsor, where she hoped to hear something more than soft words. On reaching the familiar drive, she was surprised. The crowd of reporters was gone. The cameras were gone. The house was quiet, guarded, but empty of noise. Her parents had already cleared the scene. Inside, she moved quickly to the dining room. Her parents were seated, waiting. She did not waste time. Standing before them, her voice came out sharp and direct. "Mummy," she said, "who exactly am I?" The room fell into silence. Her father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Her mother pressed her hands together, her eyes fixed on her daughter. "You are Beatrice," Sarah said firmly, "our first child, our daughter. That has never been in question." Her father nodded. "Never. Do not let them tell you otherwise." Still, Beatrice pressed. "But the stories, the rumors, how do I know?" Her mother stood, left the table, and returned with an old box. She placed it on the table and opened it. Inside were photographs, yellowed at the edges but kept with care. Pictures of Beatrice as a baby, Beatrice learning to walk, Beatrice in her first school dress. "Look," her mother said, "these are your memories. This is your life. We have never lied to you, and we never will." Her father added quietly, "Beatrice, we love you. That is the truth." The tension slowly eased. After a few hours in Windsor with her parents close and the pictures before her, it seemed the weight had lifted. She felt calmer as she left, and with that peace, she drove home. On her return home, the reporters were still waiting, but this time, she faced them. With a brief wave, she moved past their questions and stepped inside. The silence of the house was no longer heavy. She returned to her daily business. That afternoon, she even went to pick up her daughter, Sienna Elizabeth, from school, smiling at the gates as if nothing had shaken her world. Days passed, weeks passed. The rumor began to fade. Some papers called it false. Some voices mocked it as empty gossip. Even Beatrice herself grew sure again of where she belonged. But just as a moment of peace seemed to settle, another storm rose, one that revealed a truth no headline could hide. Keep watching for more. Exactly a month and a few days after the scandal, Princess Beatrice fell sick. At first, she brushed it off, calling it nothing more than a slight fever. She told those around her that it would pass in no time, but the fever lingered. It stretched into the following days and was joined by a constant headache. Her face looked pale, her strength weaker. Her husband, Edoardo Mapelli Mossi, noticed quickly. One evening, as she sat on the sofa with a cool cloth on her forehead, he stood by the window and spoke. "Bea, this isn't just tiredness," he said. "You need to see a doctor." She shook her head, managing a faint smile. "Edo, I'm fine. It's just a small fever. I'll be better tomorrow. You've been saying that for a week." "It's true," she insisted. "I don't want to make a fuss." "It's nothing serious." But the headache persisted. By the end of that week, her fever had not broken. The dull pain behind her eyes grew sharper. She found herself lying down more often than standing. Edo would not wait any longer. On a gray morning, he walked into the bedroom where she rested. His tone was firm. "Bea, we're going to the hospital," he said. She looked up slowly. "Edo, please? I'm not asking," he interrupted. "We are going." Today her eyes searched for him, but his voice left no room for argument. "Edo?" She began softly. "Enough," he said. "We're not waiting anymore. You're burning with fever. You can barely stand. And this headache isn't going away. I won't risk it." After a long pause, she sighed and nodded. "All right." He helped her dress slowly and carefully. Their daughter, little Sienna Elizabeth, joined them in the car, seated quietly in the back. The drive was steady, with Edo at the wheel. He said little, his focus on the road, but his hand reached over often to rest gently on hers. They arrived at the London clinic, the same hospital often used by members of the royal family. The entrance was discreet, guarded from cameras, but staff inside were ready. Beatrice was admitted quickly. Edo spoke directly to the attending physician, Dr. Carter, who met them in a private consultation room. "My wife has been unwell for more than a week," Edo explained. "She has had a fever that won't break, constant headaches, and she's very weak. I tried to get her here sooner, but she insisted it would pass." Dr. Carter nodded, making notes as he listened. His voice was calm and measured. "These symptoms could point to several things," he said. "It may be a prolonged viral infection, possibly something affecting her immune system. But we cannot be certain until we run tests." He turned to Beatrice, his tone gentle. "We'll start with basic blood work, and then proceed to more detailed analysis if needed. It's important we check for any underlying condition." She gave a small nod, her voice low. "Yes, doctor." As soon as the discussion was over, nurses entered to take her vitals, then wheeled her into a private ward. She was placed under observation, her temperature checked regularly, her blood drawn for analysis. Edo stayed at her side, his arm around their daughter, reassuring her with quiet words. The hours stretched. Results would take time. Doctors moved in and out of the room, checking, asking questions, and noting her responses. For the first time since the illness began, Beatrice was in a place where answers could come. The tests had been done. Now they had to wait. But when the results arrived, they did not bring the answers she expected. Instead, they tore her world apart. The days passed slowly in the London clinic. Beatrice's fever did not break, and her headaches came with greater force. By the end of the week, the doctors noted more troubling signs. Her skin showed faint discoloration in patches, and small bruises appeared on her arms where she had not fallen. Nurses also reported unusual fatigue. Even short walks from the bed to the bathroom left her trembling and short of breath. On the 5th morning, Dr. Carter returned with the first set of laboratory results. He carried the file in both hands, his expression heavier than before. "Your blood counts are lower than we would like to see," he said, scanning the chart. "You are showing signs of pancytopenia. That means your red cells, white cells, and platelets are all below normal. It suggests the bone marrow itself is not functioning as it should." Edo, standing by the window, frowned and cut him short. "Please, doctor, what does that mean in plain words?" Dr. Carter lowered the chart and spoke carefully. "To summarize, your wife's marrow, which is supposed to produce healthy blood cells, is failing to do its job. This is why she has fever, bruising, and fatigue. The marrow is suppressed. It could be a condition such as aplastic anemia or a marrow failure syndrome. The important thing now is treatment." The words landed heavily in the quiet room. "Bone marrow?" Edo repeated in disbelief, his voice sharp. "How?" Beatrice, lying weakly on the bed, turned her head toward the doctor. Her lips trembled as she spoke. "Doctor, how's that possible?" "I eat well, I exercise, I don't drink, I don't smoke. I take care of myself. And I'm still in my 30s. How can this be happening to me?" Her voice cracked at the end, and she pressed her hand against her forehead as if to hide from the reality she had just heard. Seeing the fear in their eyes, Dr. Carter stepped closer to the bed. He pulled a chair forward, sat down, and leaned in, his tone softer now. "I understand how frightening this sounds, but I want you to hear me clearly. This is not the end of the road. Bone marrow failure is serious, yes, but it is treatable. Many patients recover fully with the right care. You are young, otherwise healthy, and that is in your favor." He reached out, taking Beatrice's hand gently, then rested his other hand on Edo's shoulder. "This does not mean you will die. It means we must act. The next step is to find a compatible donor for a marrow transplant. With a good match, your marrow can be replaced with healthy hematopoietic stem cells, and your body can recover." Beatrice blinked back tears, still shaken. A donor? Yes, doctor, Carter said, nodding. And one of the most reliable places to find a match is within your own family. Parents and siblings are often the first tested because their genetic markers give us the highest chance of compatibility. We will take blood samples from them to check. We must find it from them, he reassured her. The room fell silent again. Beatrice's breathing was shallow, her chest rising and falling quickly as she tried to absorb the words. Edo reached for her hand, squeezing it tightly, as if to anchor her. For a long moment, the only sound was the steady rhythm of the heart monitor at her bedside. Doctor, Carter rose from his chair and spoke again. I will arrange for the testing immediately. Your parents will need to come in as soon as possible so we can collect samples. The sooner we know whether they are a match, the sooner we can begin treatment. Beatrice gave a slow nod, still pale, her voice little more than a whisper. Yes, please. That evening, Edo placed a call to her parents. His tone was steady but urgent as he explained what the doctors required. The Duke and Sarah were shocked with the information, but they agreed without hesitation, promising to be there by the following morning. The next day, the hospital arranged for a private entrance. The royal family was no stranger to attention, and discretion was vital. Security staff guided her parents through a back corridor, shielding them from the cameras that waited outside the main gate. When Beatrice's parents entered her room, the air was heavy. Sarah went first, her eyes fixed on her daughter lying weakly against the pillows. She crossed the floor quickly, taking Beatrice's hand and kissing it. Darling, don't worry. We are here now, she said softly. The Duke followed behind, straighter in posture, but his eyes betrayed the weight of the moment. He nodded to Edo, then looked down at his eldest daughter. You will be all right, Bea. This is just another storm. And storms always pass. Beatrice tried to smile, though her lips quivered. Thank you for coming so quickly, she whispered. A nurse entered then, carrying the necessary trays for the procedure. She explained politely what would happen. A simple blood draw. A few vials to be tested for HLA markers, the proteins that determine donor compatibility. Sarah volunteered first, rolling up her sleeve as the nurse tied the band around her arm. She looked across the bed at Beatrice and forced a smile. See? Nothing to worry about, just a little pinch. The needle slid in smoothly, filling the first vial with a dark stream of blood. Sarah hardly flinched. There. Easy? The Duke followed next. He sat silently as the nurse prepared his arm, his jaw set firmly. When the needle entered, he winced only slightly, his eyes fixed on the wall rather than the tray. Within minutes, his samples too were sealed and labeled. The nurse thanked them both and carried the vials away. These will be sent to the lab immediately, she said. We should have preliminary results within 2 or 3 days. As the door closed behind her, silence returned to the room. Beatrice studied her parents with tired eyes. I'm sorry you have to go through this for me. Sarah leaned forward, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. Nonsense! You're our child. There is nothing we wouldn't do. The Duke nodded, his tone steady. Your mother is right. This is family. Family stands. The words offered comfort, but beneath them lay a strain none of them named aloud. The thought of illness, of reliance on something as fragile as a donor match, was unsettling for them all. Doctor. Carter returned briefly to reassure them. Thank you for agreeing to the tests so promptly. This is the best step forward. Whatever the outcome, we will continue until we find a suitable donor. There are international registries and other options we can pursue. But beginning with family gives us the best chance, Edo asked quietly. And if neither of them matches? Then we continue the search. Doctor. Carter replied, calm but firm. There are millions of donors worldwide, but let us not get ahead of ourselves. First, we see what the results tell us. Beatrice exhaled slowly, closing her eyes as if to hold on to the hope in those words. That evening, after her parents left the clinic, the ward grew quieter. Edo sat at her side, reading softly from a book, while the machines around them beeped steadily. The storm outside the hospital walls seemed far away, replaced by the waiting silence of the days ahead. And as the night deepened, Beatrice whispered the only question that lingered in her heart. What if? Edo squeezed her hand gently. Then we face it together. The remaining few days that followed stretched long and slow. Nurses checked on her. Doctors passed quietly in and out. But the question of the results hung in the air, unspoken yet constant. Now this is where it gets more interesting, so stay with us. 3 days later, the wait was over. Doctor. Carter returned to Beatrice's ward, carrying a thick file. This time his expression was guarded, his steps slower. Edo rose quickly, his hand tightening around Beatrice's, as though he already sensed something was wrong. Princess Beatrice, Doctor, Carter began gently. We have the results from the compatibility tests with your parents. Beatrice sat up slightly, her breath unsteady. Her mother leaned forward, her father standing stiffly by the window. Doctor. Carter opened the file, his voice calm but heavy. The tests show no genetic match. Neither your father nor your mother is compatible as a donor. For a moment, silence filled the room. Beatrice blinked, certain she had misheard. I don't understand. How can that be? You were certain. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. The Duke's eyes narrowed, his posture hardening. Edo shook his head sharply. Surely there has been some mistake. Retest it. Do it again, Doctor. Carter's voice remained steady. We always run confirmation checks. The samples were tested twice. The results are the same. I know this is difficult to hear. Beatrice's chest rose and fell quickly. But they're my parents. How can neither of them match? Her voice cracked, the weight of the words pressing against her chest. Doctor. Carter paused, then spoke carefully. I want to stress this. A lack of donor compatibility does not automatically mean a lack of biological relationship. Compatibility depends on specific genetic markers. Sometimes even close relatives do not align. But the fact remains, neither parent can serve as a donor. The Duke broke his silence at last, his voice firm but strained. Then we look elsewhere. What are the alternatives? Doctor. Carter nodded, seizing the chance to redirect. We widen the search. There are international registries with millions of registered donors. We also have access to cord blood banks, which are less strict on compatibility. The important thing is that Princess Beatrice is not without options. The next days blurred into a cycle of waiting and tests. Beatrice remained in her private ward, her parents visiting quietly, their faces pale from the weight of unanswered questions. Outside, speculation from the media grew, but inside the hospital walls, all that mattered was the search. Finally, a week later, Doctor. Carter returned with new papers in hand. This time there was a flicker of relief in his eyes. We have found a suitable donor, he said, an anonymous volunteer on the International Marrow Registry. The match is strong, and preliminary approvals have already been made. We can proceed as soon as you are ready. Beatrice exhaled for the first time in days, her shoulders sinking back against the pillows. Tears welled in her eyes, but this time they carried something brighter than fear. Edo clasped her hand tightly, his smile faint but real. You see? There's a way forward. Sarah moved closer, stroking her daughter's hair. Thank God, she whispered. Without delay, the transplant was scheduled for the next day. The donor, Mrs. Grace Thompson, a volunteer from the International Registry, had already arrived in London. She was calm, gracious, and determined to help. The procedure itself was simple but powerful. Early that morning, doctors collected the donor's stem cells and prepared them for transfer. Beatrice lay quietly in her ward as Edo sat beside her, holding her hand. When the intravenous line was connected, it looked like nothing more than a blood transfusion, yet it carried the weight of life itself. Within hours, the process was complete. "Doctor." Carter gave a reassuring nod. "It has gone smoothly. Now, we wait for the new cells to do their work." The following days were filled with monitoring. Beatrice was weak, sometimes nauseous, but her spirit grew stronger. Nurses checked her blood counts daily, and within 2 weeks the results showed steady improvement. Her bruises faded, her skin regained its color, and her energy slowly returned. "Doctor." Carter smiled as he delivered the news. "Your body has accepted the transplant. You are healing." For the first time in weeks, Beatrice exhaled with relief. She had survived the storm. But it did not end there. Even though the transplant was successful, Princess Beatrice was not at peace. Her body was healing, but her mind was restless. The doctor's earlier explanation about donor mismatch lingered like an unfinished sentence. Combined with the old rumors she had tried to ignore, it was enough to drive her to seek answers of her own. Late one evening, she asked for a private word with Dr. Carter. "Doctor," she said firmly, though her voice shook, "you told me this should have worked with my parents. I want the truth." He adjusted his glasses, careful with his words. "Princess, I already explained. Compatibility is complex. A lack of match doesn't necessarily mean—" "I'm not certain," she cut in, her eyes fixed on him. "Can you run a DNA test?" "Please, doctor." Carter hesitated. "We can't do that without consent from your parents. It is against protocol." But Beatrice pressed on, her voice low but unyielding. "Doctor, I need this for myself. I need to know who I am." After much persuasion, he reluctantly agreed. Since the blood samples from her parents were still with the lab, he authorized a quiet comparison. 2 days later, he returned with the sealed envelope. The results were undeniable. No biological match. That evening, Beatrice summoned her parents to her side. With the envelope trembling in her hand, she looked straight at them and asked the question that shook the room. "Mommy, Daddy, who exactly am I?" She continued. "I asked the doctors to run a DNA test," she said, her voice breaking. "These are the results." Sarah glanced at the paper, then at the Duke, her face paling. "B, you don't understand." Beatrice's voice rose. "Don't tell me I don't understand. It says it here in black and white. You are not my parents." The Duke's composure cracked. He turned away, pressing a hand to his face, while Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "At last," she whispered, "we were only trying to protect you. You were so young, and it was complicated. We thought it was best." "Best?" Beatrice cried, her tears spilling freely. "You let me live a lie. My whole life, every smile, every memory built on something false." The room was heavy with sobs, no words left to mend the silence. Days later, once she was discharged, Beatrice sat in her own home, the weight of the truth pressing harder than her illness ever had. That evening, she called Edo. "I'm done," she said flatly. He froze. "Done with what?" "The lies," she answered bitterly. "For 36 years, I stood by them. I defended my father through every scandal. I carried their name proudly. And all this time, they hid my identity like it was nothing." "B, don't," Edo pleaded gently. Don't think that way. They loved you. Whatever the truth is, it doesn't erase that. But even with all Edo said, Beatrice's mind was made up. Because sometimes, when trust is broken, it never gets fixed. So, do you think Princess Beatrice was right to finally confront her parents and walk away from the lies that shaped her life? Drop it in the comments section below. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more. Also, click the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.